Talk Radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In Talk Radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio, America's libertarian voice, broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. This is your antidote to popular talk radio. Today we have as a returning guest Andy Sutton, who's an economist, a real economist, not like me. I'm a fake economist. Andy was formerly of the financial community, however, now involved in the sole purpose of blowing the whistle on the corruption and helping on corruption within the system and helping people around the globe becoming their own advocates. Andy, welcome back to our program.
Joe, it's good to see your face. It's great to be back on Liberty Talk Radio. You're
the first person in the world who's ever said, "Good look, let's see your face." I mean, have you been drinking or what? Well, Andy, I'd like if we can talk about the economic policies of what's going on currently as they apply to the individual candidates and some of the absolutely insane comments they make when it comes to how they're going to solve economic conditions in the United States. I'd like you to start wherever you want to, wherever the starting point is for you is fine with me.
Well, I think probably the most important thing that's been going on recently really is not a presidential debate item yet, or at least it's not on the forefront of that, but it's this whole minimum wage situation. As you know, California and New York recently passed legislation last week that's going to raise their minimum wages to $15 an hour over a period of years. And, there's a lot of people that I think are pretty grossly misinformed about that and what it's going to do. And the nice thing about this is that to actually see what it's going to do, all we have to do is look back and see what it's done and see how it has not worked as a policy. It's a bad policy, unfortunately. And this is something, I wrote a piece on this last week, and we were talking before the show. I really didn't even get to cover a lot of the meat and potatoes stuff of this. So there's probably going to be at least one more article, if not two, about this whole minimum wage thing, just because there's so many misconceptions about what this is going to do. So I think that's probably as good a place to start as any.
Okay. Well, in the article that you wrote regarding the minimum wage, and you try to take an objective approach, a rational approach, and you looked at both sides of the issue. I thought it was well done. One part, and I'd like you to talk about it, but one thing I want to interject is that it not only affects the people within that particular company that has employees that are minimum wage, but once they do it, it affects all other companies, even those that don't have minimum wage employees. Because if they're starting out their semi-technical people at $15 an hour, and they're different industry, not affected by the minimum wage at all, and all of a sudden Walmart has their greeters starting at $15 an hour, they obviously going to go to their employees and say, "Now wait a minute, I'm a technically skilled person. I've been here for 2 years. Walmart just hired a greeter for $15 an hour. I'm out of here. I'd love to get paid $15 an hour to greet people as they walk in." I mean, doesn't this cut across all lines? I mean, it goes beyond just the individual company or even the individual state in which the company is in. Or am I exaggerating the issue?
No, not at all. I mean, that's exactly a very good point against doing this. And it's like you said, minimum wage, the federal minimum wage right now is $7.25 an hour. And I think for the purposes of this discussion, we should probably include the federal aspect of this because there's a big push there to raise this across the country. So it's not going to be just 2 states plus Seattle. It's going to be the whole country, I believe, at some point in the near future. The first thing about this whole thing, and the biggest misconception about this, and they use the term living wage. The minimum wage does not represent a living wage. And the counterpoint to that, that's really important for people to understand. All right, when I was 16, I got a job at McDonald's. I'm not ashamed to admit it. And it paid minimum wage. But guess what? I wasn't trying to run a household on that wage. I was, a teenager, sent there because I wanted money to do things. I wanted to have a vehicle, and I was told by my parents that if I wanted to have a vehicle, that I had to pay for it. So if I was going to pay for it, I needed a job. So I went and I got a job. And, kids go to these types of jobs to learn responsibilities. Maybe sometime you have somebody who's retired. Maybe they pick up a job for a few hours just to get them out of the house. These types of things. These jobs have historically never, ever been breadwinner jobs that somebody would use solely for the purpose of supporting a household. It's always been to get some experience in the workplace, or moonlighting later in life.
Right.
These types of things, or maybe as a stopgap. If somebody gets laid off, I need some income, so they go pick up a job for 6 months or a year, whatever it is, to keep some money coming in. These were never intended to be breadwinning jobs, career jobs. The thing is, and that alone points to the fact that our economy is irretrievably broken. Because if we're looking at McDonald's, and I'm not picking on McDonald's.
No, I understand.
These types of jobs, burger flipping, Walmart greeters, these kind of things. If these are going to be career jobs, all right, and we have to have a wage that's you can support a household on by saying hi to people at Walmart, we got a big problem with our economy. It's not creating the right kinds of jobs. And this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The economy created so many jobs last month or last quarter or last year. Well, what did they create? And this is something you and I have talked about before, the quality of those jobs. And I'm not knocking anybody who works at McDonald's or Walmart or anything like that. Somebody has to do that job. The problem is who's doing the job versus who should be doing the job.
Right.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
And that is one of the issues that just gets totally shoved to the side when we start talking about minimum wage, is the fact that we got people doing these jobs that really shouldn't be doing them. There should be other more, whether it's technical jobs, skilled labor, all these types of things that we've gotten rid of because of bad government policy. And I'll take it a step further, intentional bad government policy. Right. There's a goal here. And the goal here is the lowest common denominator. You listen, and I'm gonna name names. I don't care. I don't like the guy. He's a scumbag. Bernie Sanders. He's an old man. He should be put out to pasture. Retired, never allowed to influence public policy in any way. This guy's going out and saying, "Oh, we're going to make college free." Are you kidding me? Free? Who's going to pay? What are these people on crack? I mean, seriously, somebody's going to pay for that. And these are exactly the kind of people who are sitting there saying, the Walmart greeter needs to make $15 an hour so he can support a household and be above the poverty line. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, what these people are saying. And it's just emblematic of bad policy and really totally the wrong direction that we need to be taking the country in. It's all kinds of bad.
Yeah. Well, it's strange that these people are not being forced to take minimum wage jobs. They can look for other forms of employment. And the primary form of employment many years ago was that people would find ways of marketing some sort of product or service themselves. For example, I know this one fella who had minimal education, but he was pretty handy, and so he did handyman work around houses, and he sent out flyers to everyone in the neighborhood, said, if your sink is leaking or your door is creaking or whatever the case may be, I'm a handyman, call me. The guy made a fortune. I mean, and he didn't have he wasn't a plumber per se, or he wasn't an electrician per se, but he sort of knew, and he learned how to do that. As every time he got a job, he learned something new. And so he used the job as his on-the-job training, and that made him better every time, and he worked at it, and he did very well. He wound up owning 4 houses in the neighborhood, because people sold houses. They thought it was a good deal. He actually bought the house and then flipped them. So he went from no one to being a handyman to being a jack of all trades to flipping houses. But I mean, that was a progression. And I know this guy is an amazing person, and very little education. But it seems that we're relegated. Well, when you get out of school, you can't find a job, you go to Walmart. No, there's a million things that you can do. It's like we're locked in. We have to get a job with a company. No, that's not what you do. Is that you take whatever talents or things that you like to do. You play an instrument, get a job in a band, play in a band, go around, get your name known, play different places, play at night, generate income, and you'll probably generate more income than you do at McDonald's. But at least you'll be doing something for yourself and not something for a multi-billion-dollar corporation. But we don't think that. We don't think entrepreneurial. We don't think American anymore. We think very communistic, basically, very socialistic. Yeah. Someone owes me a damn job.
Yeah, exactly, and that's it. And it goes back. It's just an extension of the entitlement mentality. Whether it's somebody owes me health insurance, somebody owes me a discount on heating oil, or whatever the situation may be. It's this. I don't even know what somebody's beholden to us somehow. I'm born, therefore you owe.
Right.
It's that kind of mentality, and it's just society does not owe you anything. Society basically only owes you, then the government owes you, the protection of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
And again, you brought up a good point. This is part of this whole cradle to grave thing that the socialists love. They just want to take care of everybody, and they talk about equality. We have to have equality, wage equality. I think in their minds, if they could have their utopia, everybody would make exactly the same except for them.
They'd right.
They'd sit on top of the hill, and everybody else would be equal below them. I mean, that's when you really get down to the brass tacks of this whole thing. That's what these people are pushing for, and this is right out of Karl Marx. This is right out of the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto. And people will sit there and say, "Oh, there they go. Cristiano and Sutton are going nuts again, talking about little guys running around, hammer and sickle emblems on their hats with wire cutters." This is right in your face. This is reality. You don't need to turn on 15,000 TV shows about people eating food, cooking food, building this, being in Alaska. There's a reality show for everything except reality. Yeah. And it's this minimum wage thing. It cuts right to the core of this whole thing. And I got a great question from somebody who read the article, and he says, "How are prices going to be affected by this?" And this is a fantastic question. Let's look back. The federal minimum wage, unless I have the wrong count, has been increased 23 times since its inception. Why did it have to be increased? Because prices what happens is they increase the minimum wage, and then you have inflation, price inflation. Because of that, the monetary inflation is already there. That dribbles into prices. Everything kind of resets itself at a higher level. And guess what? It's not a living wage anymore. So now we have to raise it again.
Right.
And the same thing happens, and you wash, rinse, repeat 23 times. So we have the history there to show that, hey, this doesn't work. All it's going to do is it's going to create a temporary little boom for some of these guys, and they're going to think everything's great, and a year, 2 years, whatever down the road, everything's going to be like it was before. Prices will have gone up across the board for everybody if they do it nationally, I'm saying. And then we're going to have to do it again. What are we going to do next? $20, $25? And what's going to happen is, and if you look at this, you can see it. It's very clear. The increments were very small. And then they started getting bigger. And they started getting bigger. And what's happening now is you're seeing they're going to happen more often, too. Because this whole, it's just like the debt. You know, it's an ascending parabolic function. That's exactly what this is going to be. And this, what I'm talking about right here, is one of the two prerequisites for hyperinflation, the wage price spiral.
Right.
And that's why people should be concerned even more than, political, rhetoric or anything like that, is they're trying to inject into this one of the two things that are required to have hyperinflation. And that's the total destruction of the dollar, is that wage price spiral. And that's what this is going to do.
Well, it's interesting. Those states that have enacted the minimum wage, I think California is one of them, they're not going to enact it at a particular point in time. They're going to incrementally enact it. In other words, it's $7.25 an hour, $7.25 an hour, I believe now. Or no, California's a little higher than that. But they're going to increase it just by $1 a year for the next, like, say, 5 years or whatever it is. And so, but they're such advocates of it. I said, if they're such an advocate and you really believe it's the right thing, why don't you just do it now? Why wait 6 or 7 years to get to $15 an hour? Do it now if it's a great idea. Well, they know it's not a good idea. They know it stinks. But it will give companies enough time to say, now, 5 years from now, will I pay Bobby $15 an hour? By the way, it's not $15 an hour either, is it, Andy? Because look at my company. I have a 401k plan. I have to pay the company half of the FICA. They take 2 weeks vacation. I have to pay them sick leave. And if they leave, my unemployment goes up. Every time I hire someone, I pay more in unemployment insurance, because I have a larger work staff. So it really costs me over $20 an hour if I pay someone $15. Now, no one in my company gets paid $15. They all pay a lot more than that because they're semi-skilled and I pay them well. I make it a point everyone gets paid more than I do, so no one can complain. You can't complain to me and say you're not making enough. I said, fine, work harder, I'll take a bigger share of the money, But, and I mean that, and I have zero turnover. But my point still being is that it doesn't cost the employer $15. It costs them really $20 and maybe more depending on the state that you're in. Now, if you or I were in business together and we knew the minimum wage is going to go to $15, which means we're going to pay over $20 an hour, we would find ways of eliminating that job or maybe incorporating robotics. Of course, robotics don't take vacations. They don't get sick. They don't quit, unless they need maintenance, and that's usually an overnight deal. And they don't sue you. Guess what? No robotics sue companies, So you have to pay FICA or any retirement, no 401k plan. Hey, sounds like a deal to me. And then people want to know why companies are so narrow-minded and so selfish as to reduce their work staff and then incorporate robotics, for example, or machines to do work. Well, if they were in that position, the employee would do the same thing. What do you think of that?
Well, that's absolutely true. If you mentioned the carrying costs of having an employee, it's generally accepted that depending on the benefits and all that stuff, it's anywhere between 25 and 40% of that employee's actual wage. So it's not just $15 an hour, like you said. Now you're talking about plus 25 to 40% of that. So you're not just talking about it's a substantial hike. Here's the thing. Now I understand that, especially on the small business side, not every entrepreneur sits down and calculates this out, but ideally, you want to achieve, if you're a manager, you want to achieve, the situation where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So if you have, the marginal revenue is greater than the marginal cost of making one more unit, guess what? You're going to keep making units until those two things equal out. When it costs more to create another unit than you're going to get from it, you're going to stop.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Okay. Now, we can superimpose that over labor. The revenue that employee brings in, is it greater than, equal to, or less than the cost of having that employee? Ideally, you want to make more off the employee than they cost you. And that's one of the ways businesses make money. If the employee costs more than they bring in, you're not going to keep them. You're not going to hire them. They have to create $15 plus 25 to 40% above and beyond that of value to the firm for the firm to either A, hire them, or B, retain them. And I don't know if you guys have White Castle out there.
Oh, no, we don't have. Do we have White Castle? Hold on, Hervey, do we have White Castle here in Tulsa? I haven't seen any White Castles. No, there's one somewhere close by, but I can't remember where. But I used to go to White Castle all the time when I was really young, on Bruckner Boulevard in the Bronx. We used to get the hamburgers for 10 cents.
Yep. Well,
you used to get a dozen for $1 something.
Yeah, it was a great burger. I love those things. Well, the CEO was interviewed here after this decision came out, and basically, because obviously New York, Manhattan, there's White Castle there, so this is going to affect them. And he basically said, look, we're in uncharted territory here with all this. And he said for their particular line of business, for what they do, labor costs represent about 30% of the final cost of a White Castle product. All right, so 30% of their cost is labor. So you start talking about, doubling that. What are they going to do? What are they going to have to do to be able to ensure that they're going to still be able to make money? And are people going to be willing to pay that price for that product with that increase built in now? And this is something that nobody you see on television, whether it's candidates, governors, whatever. Jerry Brown signed that bill in California and said right out, it's a bad idea. Well, what the heck did you sign it for then? Captain Slick? Seriously. He said, this is a horrible, he didn't say it was a horrible idea, but he said, this really doesn't make sense economically. Hey, congratulations there, Gov. What'd you sign it for? Why'd you put your name on it if it makes no sense? This is something that a lot of people have not bothered to consider is what's the impact going to be, not just on the small business, but on all businesses, because there's that whole issue. There's the labor cost issue, and are they going to be able to recoup that through, obviously they're going to have to raise their prices or cut somewhere else. They're going to have to do something. But then there's that whole, like what you were talking about earlier. Well, my manager at McDonald's right now or Walmart makes $13 an hour, and all of a sudden the greeter's going to make $15. Obviously, the manager's got to get bumped up to $15 too, because they're not making it. So now I'm going to have a greeter and a manager making the same amount of money. Well, that's not going to work. So now they're going to have to bump the manager up even more. You're going to have to maintain your gaps between your lower skilled workers, medium skilled workers, management, and so forth. And this is like a Pandora's box. It really is. And people are not considering what effect this is going to have. And this is how prices go up, obviously. This is what happens. Firms have to raise their prices. And so what ends up happening is the purchasing power of the minimum wage ends up being the same as it was before all the machinations were done. So why do it?
Yeah.
Why do it?
Right.
And this is why they've had to raise it 23 times at the federal level, because it constantly resets. So if you know this is going to do this, and how much of what kind of idiot do you have to be to sit there and see, well, but they did this 23 times, but the 24th time it's going to be different now.
Yeah.
What kind of moron do you have to be to sit there and say something like that? Why even do it? Why do it? Well, because it needs to pay a living wage. Hey, how about let's get to a monetary system where the money doesn't lose its value constantly, and then you wouldn't need a minimum wage at all.
That's correct, right? Let me throw out a hypothesis to you. The man on the street or the students in school consider an employment contract as a social contract. It's not a social it's a financial contract.
Yes.
And it's like saying, categorizing that relationship as a financial contract is sort of a dirty word. I mean, it's sort of a nasty way of looking at it. But it is. Nobody goes into business to say, well, I want to go into business, and with luck, I'll break even. But I'll probably lose a little bit of money, but that's okay. Everyone goes into business saying, hey, I'm making so much working for this guy. If I went into business for myself, I can do even better. If I really hustle, I can do this, and that, because I see all of the shortcomings of the company that I have now, things that they won't do, they won't take as suggestions. I'll start my business, I'll do it, and I'll prove to them that I was right in the first place. Now, I like Mr. Wonderful on Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary, and now he's a multi-billionaire. And what does he say? He says, all I want to do is wake up richer tomorrow morning than I am today, and he has billions. But he's right. He's absolutely right. He says it joking around. And I don't think he's joking. I think he's honest about it. But he's right. You want to wake up tomorrow richer because that means you were more successful. You were successful in what you were doing. When you're successful, you get rewarded for success. If you're unsuccessful, you get punished for that. And people want a minimum wage, want to be unsuccessful, but they don't want to be punished. That's wrong. That's against the law of nature, and I declare it the law of nature.
Unless you're a bank. Now, if you're a bank, then when you're successful, everything is great. But when you're unsuccessful, then everybody else has to pay.
That's right.
You gotta throw that out there.
Right.
See, here's the problem, and this is where the school system and society and the media and all that has just totally just messed everything up. You're punished for being successful. This is the curse of socialism, is that if you're successful, we're going to take it from you and give it to somebody who does nothing. That's a punishment.
That's right.
That was like back in the 1930s during the Depression when they raised the top marginal tax bracket to 90%. So what were they doing? They were punishing people who were the most successful. So what those people do? They stopped producing. They stopped doing whatever it was that they were doing that was generating that capital, that wealth.
Right.
So, you know what? I'm going to do it. Why? Why should I? You're just going to take it and give it away. There's no good reason for that at all. So and we've done that. We have disincentivized people to the point where you take a bunch of kids now, and a good portion of them think that welfare is a career option.
That's right.
It's totally skewed.
That's good.
You work hard. I work hard. A lot of people work hard, and so we're gonna have to support. It's like the European Union. You have the Germans who work pretty hard, and then you have the rest who like to loaf to a large
the French, for example. I mean, they get 2 months vacation a year. Yeah. They had, but everyone says, look how great it is in France. Yeah, everyone's broke in France. No one has any money. They're all miserable, and they have nothing, and they can't produce anything.
Yeah, so basically what you've got going on here is the European Union is a perfect example of failed socialism. You have one group of people that's basically working to support the rest of them. Why should the Germans have to do that? Why they're totally being disincentivized to do this. That's what's going on here too. So this whole we're kind of getting away from the minimum wage here. This is an ingrained mental broken societal problem. This whole we are looking at things from the standpoint of I'm not responsible. Somebody else, you need to take care of me because I can't do it for myself. And, I'm sick and tired of hearing these adult grown people who are in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, basically sucking their thumbs like 3-year-olds and whining because nobody's taking care of them. Where's your responsibility in this whole thing? Well, I have to work, I have to do this, and I have to do that, and somebody needs to pay me money. Then go and do something to change your situation. Yeah. Well, this is stacked against me. It is. It really is. The deck is stacked against you. But that doesn't mean you stop fighting. You just give up and say, all right, I want the world to take care of me.
Yeah, but what they don't say, Andy, is that the stack it's against everyone.
Right.
They're not being isolated. There are those people who are successful that know how to fight back and win. And those people who fight back and win those are the people who are financially responsible and making money. Those people who are waiting, it doesn't work, and they wind up on public assistance. And it's a shame. Many years ago, many years ago, when I was in school, I remember all the teachers was very strict disciplinarians, and they were, even as a little kid, I always thought that teachers had good minds. They thought very well. And today I see these young kids, they can't get jobs, so they teach. They're in the classroom. They don't want to leave the classroom. They just change their position from sitting in the back of the seat to the classroom to standing in front of the classroom. So they haven't changed anything. But these kids are unqualified to teach because they can't think. Now, they may pass the teacher's test, but they cannot think. They're still like kids. And they're the ones that are teaching the students. And now this is the crop that we have coming out, going to college, on student loans, and voting for Bernie Sanders. It seems like this vicious cycle, and it's getting worse.
Yeah, I taught. I was a teacher for 5 years. I taught business. And that's exactly what happens in not all the cases. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are some bright people in that profession, but as a whole, and I just saw a graphic the other day, and it said the most trusted profession, and they were talking about teachers, trusts Bernie. I'm like, talk about the dumb leading the dumber.
Yeah.
I don't know Bernie Sanders I don't know him at all. I know what he says. I know, more importantly, what he stands for. But this whole idea. Here's the thing: a lot of these people that are front running this kind of nonsense, the socialistic tendencies and that kind of stuff, they really don't know. I mean, somebody says it. Oh yeah. Their professor says, "Hey, if you go to this rally and hold a sign, I'll give extra credit." That happens, especially in college.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. Here's the thing: you get to the ones, the policy, the policy designers, if you will, the ones behind, that you don't see so much of. They know exactly what is going on. They're not stupid. All right, they know exactly what this whole minimum wage thing is going to do. They have models. They have projections. They have all sorts of different data and inputs and all that, and they know on face value that this is going to produce an intended effect. And what they're trying, and again, it's this whole redistribution thing. They are going to, and this is why we got into this whole globalization thing, like that kick back in the 90s. We were going to raise the world up to America's level. But that's not how it's working, is it? We're basically taking America down to the level of, the ones that, are below, in the socioeconomic, spectrum. And that's the intent. That's the intent.
Andy, I'm getting a cue that we are late in breaking for station identification. Would you hold on for about 60 seconds and stay with us?
Absolutely.
Okay, Andy, we're right. Folks, we'll be right back. We're Andy Sutton right now, economist, and we're talking about the economic policies of the particular candidates for president. Don't go away. We'll be back in 60 seconds. Thank you.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com.
Ranch Acres Audiology is about caring, about getting the most out of life, about personal attention.
Sometimes helping someone with their hearing is really helping them with more than just hearing. That's the goal of my practice. That's what my goal has been for 20 years.
You're invited to attend our next free Lunch and Learn seminar. Call us today, 918-749-7711.
This isn't your typical talk radio show. This is Liberty Talk Radio.
Welcome back, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. Today, we have as a returning guest, Andy Sutton, economist, and we're talking about the economic policies of the presidential hopefuls. And so far, it's not very pretty. Unfortunately for us, it's not very pretty because one of these clowns are going to get in office, right? So, Andy, let me propose something. I will say that I am an advocate of a $15 minimum wage. I will vote for that under one condition. And that condition is that no politician make more than $15 an hour.
You got my vote.
Okay. Why don't we do that? You say, fine, $15 an hour, I'm for it. But no, since politicians produce nothing, they don't even deserve the $15 an hour. In fact, they should get half of that. They should get $7.50 an hour because they produce nothing but heartache.
Here, well, I got a better idea. Maybe not a better idea, but a corollary idea to that. We should treat them like you would treat a waiter or waitress. They should get $2 an hour or whatever it is that they pay, a waiter now. And we should be able to tip them based on their performance. If they don't do a good job, well, you got your $2 or whatever it is an hour. See you later.
Okay, I'll buy that.
If you do something that's actually beneficial, then we the people would have the opportunity to tip you.
Yeah.
Give you a performance-based bonus or something along those lines. It's comical. And then here's the thing. They're not jamming this down our throats. This is what, not everybody, but this is what we as a society are demanding. They're giving us, proposing, I should say, to give us exactly what we're asking for. We want to be taken care of as a society. We don't want to be responsible for ourselves. We want to be coddled. And so, politicians, they love that because that gives them power. The establishment loves it because that gives them control. And how we got from, the America of the 1950s, or even, before that, when, you worked hard and you put in your 12, 14, 16 hours a day and, you're at the factory and we produced and all that, how we got from there to here is just a study in so many different disciplines, economics, history, psychology, sociology, whatever. It just never ceases to amaze me how we've gotten so turned around and going in the wrong direction. And the one thing I have not heard a single peep about any of these guys, what are we going to do about all this debt?
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, minimum wage, excuse me, let me interrupt just for one second because I wanted to make this before and I had forgotten. But if they increase the minimum wage, that's going to put price pressure on the government to raise the wages of government employees, because government employees will say, hey, a guy's making $15 an hour as a greeter at Walmart. I've been working for the government for 10 years, and I'm only making $22 an hour, or whatever the case may be. Now, that's going to boost it. So that would increase, and then that leads into the national debt. Now, that's going to increase government costs, and our national debt will go proportionally. So it's a losing proposition, which means that they have to raise taxes out of the $15 they're paying in order to pay the people in government and pay for government, because it's all going to get more expensive. And they'll be back where they started before. They have an increased money supply. Things will be more expensive, and they're going to be paying more taxes. Voila, this is great. Now, what do you think of that?
Well, here's, and I forget who it was, but it was one of them that mentioned this, that one of the benefits, notice they call it a benefit, of hiking the minimum wage, and they were talking on a national level. One of the benefits of following the suit of California and New York doing this nationally would be that it would greatly increase tax revenues to the government, and it would help to cut. This is how it was pushed. Well, this will help cut the deficit, because the government will be taking in more tax revenue. We can actually use this to turn around the fiscal situation and all this other stuff. I'm like, whoa. So we're going to take this money. We're going to require that basically a whole bunch of people get more money in their paycheck, which, and again, on its face, you're going to have a hard time getting people to say, well, I don't want more money in my paycheck. But we'll put that aside. So we're going to give these people this money. The government's going to take a whole bunch of it. When has the government ever used a windfall to pay down a debt? Find me an instance, please. I don't think there is one. The government's going to take that money and it's going to get bigger. That's what it's going to do. It's going to spend it. Some of it will be on entitlement programs so that we can have more people that don't work. However it gets distributed is going to be however it gets distributed. But it's not going to go to pay down the national debt and improve the fiscal situation. And anybody who thinks that it is really needs to check in at the reality point,
right,
or something like that, and get an examination done, because that's not going to be what happens. There's no history to back that up. There's no precedent to back that up. It's a bad argument, that was made. I forget which one of them. I wish for the life of me I could remember, but I don't want to improperly accuse somebody.
Yeah. Well, are there any candidates that have an economic policy that makes any sense at all? I haven't been able to detect that, other than the libertarians. The three libertarian candidates were on the John Stossel show. That's Austin Peterson, John McAfee, and Gary Johnson, and they all made sense. I sat there. I said, "This is so unlike the." They were in concert with one another because their principles are the same, and they had little different takes on it. They took it from a different perspective, but in effect they were generally in agreement, which was kind of surprising for debate. But they all made valid points, and it was refreshing to hear that. I would love to have had that type of thinking, not so much the Libertarian Party, I'm telling you, that type of thinking interjected in the Republican and Democrat. Now, Rand Paul quasi did that, but they didn't give him an opportunity to speak, so he never received equal time. But that was interesting, and they had free market resolutions, to our debt problem, all of which were going to be very painful, and they admitted it. But do any of the Republicans or Democrats have anything that's really viable?
No, I mean, you've seen what the Democrats and Republicans have given us. One claims to be conservative and really is kind of slightly to the left of center, and the other claims to be in the center and is so far over to the left that it's not even, they're not even on the radar. Yeah. They're a different zip code. And the the establishment, that political establishment, has firmly embraced Keynesianism. Big government spending, whether the economy needs it or not. They've taken what Keynes proposed, and Keynes himself even knew the limitations of what he was proposing, and I think he kind of probably had a guilty conscience about the whole thing, to be totally honest with you. These guys have taken that and they put it on steroids.
Yeah.
And now we are swiftly moving in a direction, and people don't understand the proper definitions of socialism and communism either. They're degrees on a continuum. Socialism is where the government controls the majority of the factors of production: land, labor, capital, technology, so forth. Then you get to communism, where basically the state controls everything.
Yeah.
They control, and obviously, what are we talking about? Land, labor, minimum wage ties right into that. The government has snared control over labor. I mean, you look at all the regulations, aside from, pay rates and things like that the government has taken control over labor. And the land, capital. I mean, we are swiftly moving in that direction. And you even go and talk about that to a lot of people, and you'll be called anti-American, you'll be called a traitor, all these sorts of things. But here's the problem: the argument has already been framed for people by the media, and people, for whatever reason, and again, this would be another fine study for somebody, or for whatever reason, are not willing to think. They don't want to think. And I don't know if it's because of the technology. They've been Twitterized, Facebook, and Instagram to death. Whatever's going on. But the American thinker is largely gone. The American mind has been polluted with all sorts of garbage, sports, drama, media, circuses, all this kind of stuff. Everything except for what's important. And especially when you talk economics, and look at the proof. Look at the average American's balance sheet. It's a mess. They're in debt. They're unhappy. They think that, if I buy the newest this and the newest that, I'm going to be happy, and I'll go into debt to do it. Well, they're not happy. Now they're under stress because, they've got all this debt. And it's just, and look at the government. It's the same thing. It's like the blind leading the blind. Yeah. And, so I have not heard one thing. I actually was going somewhere with that. I haven't heard one person, other than what are normally called the minority parties, like the Constitution Party, the Libertarian Party. Other than that, from these mainstream guys, I haven't heard one person say, you know what, we need to suck it up. We have made a lot of economic mistakes and otherwise. We need to stop all these ridiculous wars. Because that makes a lot of money for people. We can't do that. We need to stop all this stuff. We need to endure the pain that we're required to endure to clear the slate, basically, of all of this kind of misbehavior, and then we need to start over. And we need to start doing what we used to do, manufacturing things, putting in a hard day's work, and these kinds of things. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of pain, but we need that. I haven't heard a single person say that.
Yeah, it's a shame is that when if they keep on talking about the GDP is increasing very slightly, and we may be in negative first quarter GDP depending on which numbers they use, but a good portion of the GDP now is medical care. Well, when you think about it, let's assume for a second that 100% of the GDP was medical care. I know that's ridiculous, but that means everyone is sick, no one's producing anything, but we'll have a tremendous. But the GDP will go up by 10%. And so medical care is included in the GDP, and also production of a military, defense equipment is in the GDP, which is destructive money, destructive items, destructive money that destroys money, it doesn't create money, and it requires more taxation taken from the citizens to produce it, just to blow up a bomb someplace else, and so that's destructive. So defensive and Medicare are destructive elements of the society, basically, and yet that's included in the GDP, and that's what we're spending most of our money on. So when I see the American economy, I say, geez, take those two items out. If you watch programs like Shark Tank, and there are a few others similar to that, what do they always say? They say, well, where are you producing this? The guys say, well, I'm producing here in the United States, and that cost me $8.40 to produce. They go, no, China, Vietnam,
Yeah.
You can get the price down to $1.20 and we'll do business with you. I mean, they say it outright, and they're absolutely correct, because it's not worth that amount of money. But it seems that all these numbers that we have, people are not giving any thought to what they mean, and really what we're producing. And we're not producing. We're producing, I guess, healthcare, which is destructive, and defense, which is destructive. Everything major portion is destructive money.
Well, I read not too long ago a study that was done, and I'll have to put it up on the blog. But basically, the upshot of it was that, all things being equal, by the year 2023, which is 7 years away, 100% of the government's tax revenues are going to be spent on Social Security, Medicare, and servicing the national debt.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any money for anything else. So, I mean, if that's even close to true, just think of the impact. And that's only 7 years away. That's not that far away. And I kind of think there's probably some truth to that, because you just look at what is going to happen with Medicare, with the costs being what they are, and the number of people that are into that system now. The baby boomers aren't really that old yet. So, that's going to be getting worse. And it's not even that. And I see this every day now. Young people in their 20s, 30s, 40s with debilitating obesity, debilitating diabetes, other types of health problems because of a lot of times poor decisions on their own parts. People in their 40s and 50s with COPD from smoking.
Yeah.
These are people that they're never going to be in the workforce again. They're never going to work because of these things. And there's more and more of these people all the time. And they're on this kind of assistance, that kind of assistance, some other kind of. They've taken themselves right out of the equation, basically, as far as producing anything. I can 100% see Medicare just completely spiraling out of control.
Absolutely. Harry Dent makes a case in his book, The Demographics Cliff, and it's very simple arithmetic. We have more people living longer, and the people who are living longer were those people who are very productive back in the 40s and 50s and whatever, they're older folks, they're living longer. Now they are on Social Security. They are stopping to produce. Some of them. I'm 73 and I'm still working. 24 hours a day. But many are working because they get bored to death. But the younger people are going to college under high debt. $50,000, $70,000, some $100,000 in college debt, and are living in the basement in their parents' house because they can't find a job. And there's a tremendous imbalance where before you had a large young population that were paying into, from being productive, paying in to pay for those people who were older and needed some assistance and medical assistance and whatever. But that's backwards now. We have the older people who require the more medical assistance. I'm one of them. Here I am, and young people who are not working. So the money's got to come from somewhere. And it just keeps on piling debt upon debt upon debt. Michael Tanner's been on our program a few times. He's from the Cato Institute. He does a great job of analyzing national debt. And the charts that he showed show the national debt literally going vertical, just straight up in after 2020.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you had Lawrence Kotlikoff on not too long ago.
Right. Yeah.
And he's developed some really good models over the years, and it's basically saying the same thing. It's out of control. These programs are broke, and so what is going to happen? And this goes way beyond this whole idea of this minimum wage, but this is 100% all about these political solutions for these problems. There are none. That's just it. There are no solutions for these problems. So what are we going to do as a society? Are we going to? I think it was Newsweek put their cover article back in 2011 was the case for killing Granny. What are we going to?
That's right, case for killing Granny. I remember that.
Are we going to start euthanizing senior citizens?
Right.
I mean, this is scary stuff.
Yeah.
Because something's going to have to give here.
Yeah.
Now, Medicare across the board for 2016 for this year, this is everything from lab tests to doctor's appointments to hospital stays to rehab to ambulance, whatever it is. Across the board, 10% cut. So that's not enough. It's pretty much baked in the cake that they're going to do the same thing next year. So more of these costs are going to start coming home to roost on the actual recipients of Medicare. A lot of these people, they don't have the money. We're going to have a lot of very sick people that are not getting the care. You look at, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, almost half of the elderly population in this country during wintertime has to make a decision on a monthly basis. Are we going to eat? Are we going to heat the house? Or are we going to buy our medications?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it is really bad what is going on, and this is the fruits of these socialist policies over the years. LBJ, he kind of presided. It wasn't his agenda, but he presided over the Great Society, forming these Great Society programs. FDR, same thing. Social Security back in the 30s. These guys have presided over this stuff. I don't know that they necessarily drove the policy, but they championed it.
Right.
And that's the same way it is today. These knuckleheads that are arguing with each other on television, they're not the crafters of this policy. They're the ones that, have to package it up and sell it to the people. But the thing is, obviously, they're doing a pretty good job. The people, they're demanding to buy this stuff, and this is the problem. We can sit here and talk about minimum wage and entitlements and all this other stuff until we're blue in the face. The problem is, what we need is an awakening of the American mind, and for people to start saying, you know what, this just isn't viable. And start to demand better solutions, and not only that, but to start to actually practice some sound fiscal behaviors on their own. And we're not seeing that at all.
Well, what do you see in the near term, let's say within the next 6 months to a year, regarding the economy? I mean, there's predictions of a currency crisis, trade wars, even military conflict because of Europe is a basket case. I thought it was going to be bad. It is much worse than even I had anticipated. It seems like every country has riots in the street for one reason or another, and they're not all the same, but they all have the same theme. What do you see for the next year? Where is it going, just generally speaking?
Well, all of these things that are going on, the dislocations over in Europe, the economic malaise, all these things are going to continue on their path, which means they're going to slowly deteriorate. Our economy is going to continue to slowly deteriorate because there's nothing. It's like an object. You throw a football, it's going to travel that trajectory, and unless something, the wind blows it or somebody tips the ball or something like that, it's going to follow that trajectory that it assumed when it was thrown. And that's kind of what we've done. We've kind of thrown the economy in a certain direction, and it's not going to change from that unless there's some kind of positive more negative, action that's taken on it. So if we don't do anything, it's just going to continue to deteriorate as it's been. Same for the currency. Well, gas prices are down right now. Well, it's an election year. Gas prices normally go down during an election year. There's all kind of shenanigans going on behind the scenes with petroleum, oil, the whole Syria thing. That pipeline. You and I talked about that 3 or 4 years ago. That's real. That's why I said the Russians are not going to leave Syria in the hands of American control, and that's exactly what's happened. They're not leaving. Because they know, the deal was inked. They tried, the United States, we tried to get Assad out. We tried to use that chemical weapons stunt a couple of years ago, and that proved to be pretty much a lie. All this stuff, all these games that people have started playing, these things are all following their trajectories. Now look at Austria, just had a bail-in.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So. Austria, it's a sizable country. It's not, Canada or the U.S., but you know what? That march is continuing.
Right.
That's something else. So we're gonna, there's one more country. So now we got Greece, we got Poland, we got Cyprus. Now we got Austria in there too. So that's going down a prescribed path.
Yeah.
And the policies have been in place for years now. To allow these banks to do this, to allow them to steal depositor money, when they get into trouble. And I seriously, I don't know if it's going to happen in the next 12 months, but I think that our retirement system here in this country, meaning the private retirement system, the IRAs, the 401ks, I think that's going to become under serious pressure from a government that, if this study that, I was looking at actually is even close to being true, where all the government's tax revenues are going towards servicing debt and entitlement programs, they're going to need operating income. Where are they going to get it?
They're going to get it from the people, I guess. They're going to ask if you have anything of value, it goes to the government, so the government can confiscate it, regardless of what it is, in order to pay the debt. And you have to do it because if you're not being patriotic, and you don't care about your country. That's the problem.
Right. If you don't allow your IRA to be looted.
That's right. The loot IRAs, everything, right.
By an irresponsible and out of control criminal government, then you're not a patriot.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just ridiculous. Or they can hyperinflate. Either way, you're going to lose.
Yeah, Andy. I'm sorry, Andy. We're about out of time. We're at the very witching hour. This thing flew by. This 1 hour. In fact, it's been over an hour because we started late because of technical problems on our end, so we apologize for that. So, Andy, let me give you the last minute to sum things up.
Well, and again, just in summary, I would expect things to continue along the same path that they've been going on. I don't expect anything to be terribly changing so much from this whole election that's going on. What I am planning on doing personally here is putting out at least one more piece on this whole minimum wage thing, just because I want people to understand it.
Right.
I think a lot of people have been fed a lot of baloney about it, and these are people that actually are looking for, information. I don't know it all. I know some things, but hopefully we can present some information and people can make a better informed decision about some of this stuff that's going on economically. If you want to get me, my website's www.andysutton.com. That'll take you to my blog. There's a place there where you can contact me via email if you'd like to. I try to get stuff up as much as I can. Try to get the most important stuff up, what I feel is the most important. So, there's not 56,000 entries every day because there's so much stuff going on. But
right.
Feel free to drop me a line. As always, I love coming on this show and talking to you because you know what's going on. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all you do for this country. And you're really you're a great patriot, Joe. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. You're the best, Andy. And I hope you will accept our invitation to return at a later date.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Andy. Folks, this is the end. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, as my wife would say, You're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. You've been listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well, stay tuned.